Alrighty, so today I'm gonna be doing something very exciting, well, at least for me. What it's gonna be about is idle animations and how to change them. So, for example, now I enter a cold zone, I have sad idle animation, I enter a hot zone, I'm now happy, and I'm out of the hot zone, and my idle changed back to normal. And if I go to higher elevation, I will have an other, this board one, like this. So yeah, this was actually a request from 3 years ago, but I finally got to it. So here we go. So here we are in the editor, and the first thing I'm gonna do is open our animation blueprint. For now, there's not much to do, but what I wanna do first is show you how you can change the idle animation, and then we are gonna write the logic for it. So first go into the animation graph, and here you can see we have something called a locomotion, and this is where we have our idle animations. So the way we are gonna do this to stay clean is we are gonna add a new state machine. Perfect, and I am just gonna call this whole state machine idle. And then we are gonna cache this pose. So save cached pose, because why not? Clean this up, perfect. And after that, we have nothing in there, but that's perfectly fine. We are gonna add it. We are gonna add a state, and we are gonna call it idle. Awesome, and inside this idle, we are gonna add our idle animations, basically. So what that means is, actually, let's exit out, and if I go into here, I have all my idle animations, which I prepared for this video. I'm just gonna select them all quickly and plug them in here. We have the drunk, the happy, the sad, and we have the dwarf idol. These are from Mixamo, by the way, and they do look weird because the retargeting wasn't perfect, but it's fine for now. And one thing we want to do with these first is I'm gonna set them to loop. It was default some versions back, I think, but it's not anymore. So, and I'm just gonna save, and the way we are gonna decide which one to play is we are gonna blend poses by int, I think. Yep, perfect. And I will show you how that works. So we have the happy and the sad idle animations. And yeah, before I show you that, we actually have to use this idle pose inside here. So we are gonna break this link. Again, this is inside locomotion. So anim graph, locomotion, and inside there, idle. We are gonna use our cached pose. And this is gonna be the idle pose. And if we plug it in, file save, this is the happy idle. I know it looks pretty weird, but bear with me. So right now, as you can see, the happy idle is making, because the active child index is 0. But if I change that to 1, like that, and compile, now we are playing the sad one. Don't worry about the foot. And basically, this is what we are going to use to change between any and all the idle animations that we have. So we are just going to add a few pins here. Where is it? A blend pin. And one more. And actually one more. Because we are going to shift it down a bit and use this one. I'm just going to copy this into here. I know it gets confusing with idle and idle state, but you at this point you can delete this one if you want to. I'm not gonna, because I don't know what kind of stuff will I make, so I keep the originals. So what we're gonna do is paste it here, because this is gonna be our like default. And I'm just gonna copy connect everything. And we are actually gonna plug a variable in here. But we don't have that variable yet. We are gonna have that in our event graph. So what we are gonna do here is gonna be, we are not gonna have that variable yet, but what I wanna do is drag out of character and cast to the third person. Character blueprint, perfect. And then we're just gonna connect sequence. And casting is not always good, but since the many and the animation blueprint are loaded at the same time, it doesn't do anything bad this time because they are both loaded. So it's not gonna come with a performance issue in this case. So this is the normal way of doing it. Anyway, from here we are gonna check if it's valid, like this. And if we are valid, then we are gonna access a variable inside the third person character, and we are gonna create it momentarily. So go into the third person character, and I have 3 variables here, but these are just conditions. This can be whatever you want them to be. I have a hot zone, a cold zone, and a drunk variable, right? So these are going to be my conditions, but the ones I am going to make is, I'm going to call this active idle index. Perfect, and this is going to be an integer. And yeah, and this is what we are going to need, right? So if we go back to here, now we can drag out from here and say that I need the active idle index. And we are going to use a set. No, sorry, never mind that. We are going to use a get. Like this. And we are going to promote it to a variable. And now we have the active idle index here. So anytime, this one is basically an update node, which means that if our character is valid, we are updating a bunch of things. And every time this update runs, which is several times a second, we are going to get the active idle index and set it locally here in the animation blueprint. And now we can go back to our idle state somewhere. And here, we can actually put it here. And now if I change it in the third person character, the changes are going to reflect in the animation blueprint and in the animation. So now we are going to create a function in the third person character blueprint, which is going to be a simple one. It's going to be set active idle index. So in here, what we are going to do is we are going to create a branch. And for this branch, we are going to need a condition. And since I am going with a way that I can have more than one idle animations changing each other at a time, we are going to actually use an idle array. We are going to do, an array is basically just a list. And what I want this to be is actually an array of integers. And we are going to keep a bunch of numbers in here. And those numbers will be dependent on how many conditions are true. And I'm going to add an elevation condition for this, but that can come later. So I'm going to put this in here, get idle animation. And I actually want to check if, basically, do we have any elements inside this array? And the way we can check that is very simple. We are just going to check the length of this array. And if this length is greater than 0, that means that there is at least one element inside it. So if we have something inside this array, the idle animation array, then we are going to choose between them. But if we don't, I just want to return basically right away. And how that's going to work is I am going to set this to 0, the active idle index, right? And we are going to set that to a different value, Control D, and it will copy the node you have selected. So basically, if it's empty, I am just gonna change the idle index to 0, which is, if you remember, the 0 is the default. But if we have something in there, then what I want to do is I'm gonna grab this array, not the whole thing, this array, and I'm gonna do a getter basically. And I'm gonna get a copy of, I am gonna choose randomly, and the way I'm gonna do that is, for example, if I have 1 and 2 inside this, then the way I would choose between them is choose a random index between 1 and 2, and then it gets randomly chosen. And get random int, oh, it's not a get, random int in range somewhere, perfect. And the range is gonna be basically between 0 and the length of the array, but the way arrays work is they start from 0, so if it has 5 elements, then the range should only be 4, because that's index 4 is the last element. So this is gonna be our max. And I'm gonna try to tie this up a little bit. So basically what this get does is, from this array, why is it? Oh, sorry about that. Wrong place. So what this does is checks the length, and that's going to be the max number of this. Okay, I'm making mistakes left and right. So the length is going to be the maximum if we subtract 1, and 0 is the minimum. So if I have 3 elements inside my array, those are 3 idles I can choose from, let's say 1, 2, 3. Then this is gonna randomly choose between 0 and 3. And what gets chosen will be set as the active idle index. So does that make sense? So yet again, if our length is bigger than 0, then actually I switched this up. That doesn't matter. I'm just do this. So if our length is bigger than 0, that means we have something. Then we are going to choose from that and set it. If we don't, it's just going to be 0. And that's perfect. And by default, it doesn't have any elements, and the active index is empty, is 0 as well by default. So we are done with basically half of our logic. And I do want to create another function. And that other function is gonna be a bit more complicated, but not complicated at all. So, and this function, I do want to call it, let's say, choose, no, what should I call it? Determine, that's a nice word. Determine idle animate array. That's a mouthful, but we are gonna roll with it. And here, right away, I do want to start with a sequence. So if you want only one idle animation at a time, then you don't need a sequence, you're just gonna chain together a bunch of branches. But in my case, I do want to randomly select from a number of different stuff. So I'm just gonna get these in because this is the place where we are gonna make sure that we can or cannot use these conditions. And I'm gonna actually create vector location, I think. Perfect. We are gonna split this, and we are gonna check if the z value is bigger than, this is gonna be an elevation number, 1800. So yeah, this can change based on your game or your needs. But this is just gonna check the elevation of my character. So here, right at 0, we are just gonna create a branch right away. And what I want to test very first is any of these conditions true? Because if they aren't, then I do want to stay with my default idle animations. So what I'm gonna do is call an or boolean, and I'm just gonna plug these bad boys in there. And so basically, if any of these is true, then this is gonna be true. But if but if all of them are false, then I'm gonna return right away. We're gonna add a return node, and this is gonna be an output, and this is gonna be, I'm gonna call it index array. And this is gonna be an integer array. Perfect. And yeah, this should be fine. And I think, do we have a default value on it? So if it's true, we do nothing because there comes the later steps. So I'm just gonna do a couple of branches real quick for all the conditions. So let's see, if we are in a hot zone, what I want to do is it? No. Okay, that's why. No, not that one. Promote the local variable. Oh, it doesn't let me name it the same way. Doesn't matter. It's gonna be a raw. And what I want to do with this is I'm just gonna copy it here and do this. We are gonna add an element to this. And basically, this is just gonna repeat like this for every branch. And these are gonna be for the individual conditions. So, drunk and elevation. Connect this up. And now here's the question, what should we add? Now, first condition, if we are in a hot zone. So let's say I want to be happy when I am in a hot zone. Let's see, happy is gonna be blend pose 1, which means it's gonna be the index of 1. So for the happy, I want to add the index of 1 to this index array. For the cold zone, I want this to be sad. I think that was 2. And for drunk, I think that was 3. I'm pretty sure I set it up like that. Let's see. So sad, yeah, that's 2. And drunk is 3. Perfect. And then the high elevation is going to be the dwarf pose. So like that. So if we run through what each of these things are doing, I'm going to be quick. First, we check if everything is true or not. If we don't have any conditions active, we are just going to return an empty array. Then, if it's true, we do nothing and go into number 1 and check if we are hot and add it to that. And then nothing, go into step 2, cold zone, and so on. And for the last step, I just want to return. Add a return zone. And I'm just gonna return this array, because by this point, I added every condition that I wanted. If I am only drunk, then only this one is gonna be true and only the index 2 are gonna be added, so it's gonna be a one-length array. But basically this way we ensure that if we have multiple of these conditions true, all of them are inside this index array. And we can compile and save here. Now, real quick, if you don't want multiple indexes to choose from, then what you do here is you don't need a sequence. Or maybe you do for the first like exit criteria. But you do have the branch, and let's say if this is what you would do if, let's disconnect our sequence here. What you would do is go to your branch right away and check if we are in a hot zone. And then you would add the, so if we are not in a hot zone, so it's false, then you go into the second, and every false would be connected up. But after every add, you would do basically this. And not even the array, but you could just return this right away without, it's not an array anymore because you only need one index. So you would chain them up that every false comes down, and then at the end you return all the same, but in this case you would return the 0. So after every add, you would do a return node, and every false you would come down to the next one, and that way you don't need a sequence, but you cannot make an array of idles, only a single idle index. So yeah, that's about it for the function, right? Let's connect the sequence back up, and it's perfect now. Now our only task left is to add the rest of the logic. We have 2 functions. So we go back into our event graph. Here I have a tick. We are going to use that. But first, before we add the input mapping, or it actually doesn't really matter, we can just sequence it here. So first we are going to add the input mapping. That doesn't really matter now. And what we do here is set timer by function name. And our function's name is going to be this one, the set active idle index. And I'm just going to press F2, copy this, and paste this to the function name. And set the time to however long you want the idle animations to cycle. So I will set 3 seconds, tick looping. So this means that every 3 seconds, we are going to check the active idle. We are going to check the idle animation array, and then in the active idle index, we are going to set it every 3 seconds. And in the active idle index, we already have this. So perfect. But if you have paid attention, you might find something missing, and that's very simply, we need to set the idle animation array. And we can do that at the tick. You can just continue from, oh, you might not even have the tick yet. You just, do this. I already have it. You can only have 1 tick node. I'm going to sequence it too, for clarity's sake. And yeah, move this, come on, this back. And here, what I'm going to do is call my determine idle animation. And the only thing left to do is set the idle animation array to the return value of this. And basically we are done. If you didn't know, the tick is that every tick, so multiple times a second, a bunch of times a second, these stuff run. So we are constantly checking if any of these conditions are true. And if they are true, they get added to the array. If they are false, the array is going to become empty. That's why we are setting it at the end. So it doesn't grow, it will always be a maximum of 4 length. Or, yeah, 4 length. So if we go back to the game, I'm fairly certain it should be working now. Let's check the event graph. That seems fine. And here we are changing by the index. Let's try this one out. You can press F10 and it puts full screen. And oh, frozen. Let's test this out. Which way I was oriented. Okay, I am in a cold zone. And I am sad. Now I am in a hot zone. And now I am happy. And now I am drunk. Okay, let's go into a hot zone. Sorry, hot zone. I am happy and I am drunk. So it should be changing from happy to drunk to happy randomly. That's why, because I have an array. I know it looks weird, but obviously these are animations that I just picked up for demonstrations purposes. Yeah, let's try the elevation one. Oh, I'm still drunk. I'm not high enough. Okay, I am high enough now. And drunk again. Perfect. So everything is working. You can conditionally change your idle animations. You can set whatever conditions you want. You can make it that only one is active at a time. You can blend any animations. So there you go. I hope you enjoyed this one. Have a good one. Bye.